Agenda today is going to be me starting off with just a quick overview, as well as like pre-granting stuff. Timothea is going to handle the bulk of of the application process, and then we will go into like post-application stuff and also answer any questions you might have. Keep in mind, Karen did share with us questions that were given ahead of time, and I think we went over it, Timothy and I, and we feel that that between my first part and her second part, it will be a bulk of it, and then the others, which we're not covering, we will answer afterwards. And most of those are the COVID-19 related ones, which I will also ask Gabe, because a lot of that is in the hands of the local cultural council. But again, thank you. And Timothy, if you can go to the next one, or yeah, this is just and that Postapp overview will be relatively quick, because we want to, in the interest of time, trying to get as many questions as possible. Yeah, and you can just go to next. Thank you so much, Timothea. I'm going to stay on this map for a little bit, but I'd be remiss if I just didn't introduce myself. My name is Luis Cotto. I'm here with Timothea Pham. I'm a program manager for Mass Cultural Council, but I'm originally a Hartford boy. So and I say that because I think Hartford shares a kind of a sister city relationship with Springfield, where I also lived when I was younger. And Puerto Rican from the mountains of Puerto Rico, and a lot of the Puerto Ricans that came to Springfield and also Holyoke came for the same reason. A lot of tobacco right along the Connecticut tobacco valley, and hence we are and there in lands of the Connecticut River tribes. And right now, physically, I'm in the land of an unceded land of Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts tribes. That being said, I will go right into just, first of all, just one big history lesson, because I know one of the questions was regarding the tons of like acronyms that get floated around when we talk about like the MCC and the CLCC and so on and so forth. And you can stay on this one for a while, Timothy. Actually, stay on this one for a while. The MCC, the concept of local cultural councils started back in 1979. Massachusetts is one of the only states in the nation, if not the only, who grants money individually to municipalities for granting out to the local community for arts and culture, specifically arts, humanities, and interpretive sciences. In 2000, it was their LCC started, around 79, but then in 2000 it was more formulaic. So for those 40 or so years, it's just been, right now it's probably the most extensive volunteer-run funding program in the nation. 310 LCCs, and every year the state house, the state legislature allocates money to the program, which then we put it through a formula which is basically based on population and also comparative housing costs, with the idea being obviously that the more population receive more, but also they use that as an indicator of poverty, so the more needy populations receive a little more. And I'm just going to list off like 5 that are the top 5 in population. The top 5 population, and the numbers vary, but it's Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Cambridge, and Lowell. Cambridge is number 4, but if you look at the amounts that they received last year, Boston received $191,000, Worcester received $121,000, Springfield received $137,000, Cambridge as the 4th received $23,000, and Lowell received $75,500. And as you can tell, even though Cambridge is the 4th largest, they received a relatively low amount based on that, and that's because they're a really affluent city, right? And I just put that out to highlight it. And if you look back if you could go back to the map for a second, Timothea, thank you so much, these represent the different LCCs we work with. And then what we do is we break the Commonwealth up into regions. And then the color code shows you which officer or manager at the office works with that region. The communities team works with 3 of the buckets of funding that we have at the MCC. They are the LCC program, the cultural districts program, and the festival grant program. Um, so this is pretty self-explanatory. Like right now we're in Springfield here. All the purple is with Timothea, and Timothea also has 2 other regions. One is Greater Boston, this purple over here, and then also the island of Nantucket is all one region for Timothea. I have the green, which is basically Greater Merrimack Valley and Metro West, but I also manage the cultural districts program. And the cultural districts, we have 50 of them in the state, and they are all the lighter ones that you see. And some of these have 2. Boston has 4 right now. Gloucester has 2, Hyannis has 2, so on and so forth. But mostly it's like 1 per each. And then the festivals program for people who receive festivals money is a $500 grant. It's not represented here, but that's managed by Lisa Simmons. And then our wonderful faces are on the next slide with phone numbers. And I apologize for the low resolution, I think, because I can't even see it here. I don't know how people can see it on theirs, but we can get that to everybody. But in this case, the program officer for here is Timothea. And she's the one that works a lot with Andrew. I work a lot with Karen, and then Timothea is responsible for knowing in the office basically what's happening on the ground. We do have someone asked about other grant opportunities, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on the chat a link to the page that has our other grants, which include our cultural investment portfolio, creative youth development, the UP initiative, which is universal participation, the artist grants, and cultural facilities funds. And I won't go deep into that, but you can go there and check it out. Someone asked about, are these monies from, where these monies come from? 100% of these monies that I'm just talking about comes from the state legislature and the allocation that they give us, and then the allocation that our council approves. The LCC monies, depending on where you get that money from, can be 100% that, but some people also do fundraising and they'll add to that and they'll get monies for that. And some LCCs get a match locally from the local municipality. So Cambridge, as we pointed before, was about $24,000. They still grant out about 100,000 because they do some fundraising, and they also get a match from the town, from the city. So, and this is the one time that I will go to the side and say that as residents and local stakeholders, especially creative stakeholders who want to have a say in your city, like anytime you see an elected official, because these LCCs never have enough to give to, like, right, all the grants that come. So saying, hey, you know, have you ever thought about, you know, to the mayor, to the city council, you know, advocating for that? This is something I live in Cambridge, and one of the things I've done every time I see the city manager, I say, when are you going to start, you know, what you will call it, matching the MCC amount? This is before I started working for the MCC, but you need to use your voice as a constituent. Someone asked about taxes. Yes, this money is taxable. We'll talk about disbursements later, but this money does go towards your taxable income. Above 600, I believe, is what, like, anyone who does this, like I've done small nonprofit work all my life, and I never sent out a 1099 for anything under 500. A lot of spaces don't, some do. They don't have to report anything under 600, but you might get it. And so people who qualify for Section 8 vouchers, people who qualify for free and reduced school lunches should consider that when they're receiving it. And there are some things you can do. You should just talk to the people that are giving you the grant, because like NIFA thinks about that a lot, you know, just as far as how this might affect you as a human, other than just receiving some monies for your art. And someone asked, does this cost? None of this costs anything. You don't have to pay to apply. And and then Timothy, if you can go to the next one. Thank you. One thing I wanted to stress is that you can also apply, and I think some people have, is that you can also apply for multiple towns. We have people who apply to as many as 20. They might have a program that they want to propose to the local library, and they'll just do 20 different applications for that same program. And it's a numbers thing, right? In this case, the one person I'm thinking about, people really like him, so he might get like 18, depending on funding. He might get 18 like yeses. And then he goes, and this is like his summer gig, right? Then he'll go to all the libraries and do this program, and also equally affected because of COVID right now. So that's one thing, you know, we do ask people to look at all the priorities, because each LCC decides on their own what they want to prioritize. So if you want to apply for the town of Lenox, or Bedford in this case, Bedford will require you to have a letter of support from a resident or a stakeholder. People put in different things. And we do have here, you can check each local cultural council, and Timothea will show you the actual webpage. But one thing I'll add to this, where it says mass-culture.org, if you do mass-culture.org / the name of the city or town, it takes you right to their priorities, their LCC page. And there are different tabs, and you can look at what those priorities are to see, you know, like if you look at Springfield, they will tell you that the maximum that they will grant is 5,000. Someone asked about that, about what is the average, and I think it was like 1,500, they gave out about 133 grants, and they have a max of 5,000, and their average grant was $1,580. They had a lot of 600, a lot of 800, but the average was about 1,580. And then I'm just gonna, before I end this part, someone did ask, and I'm just gonna, you can hit us individually or just put it out in the chat so everyone can see it, but this one was privately. Can someone apply for a mural training program that will work with artists from each of these communities? That is a great question. And if I'm reading this correctly, if you as the artist are applying to, say, Longfellow, to give a workshop to muralist wannabes, like people who want to do that, then that is perfectly acceptable. And yeah, and you can do if you have this as like a curriculum that you do, right? Then yes, you can do one big one and ask multiple people to come from wherever. You could do a specific one for East Longmeadow, you know, so on and so forth, and apply to those individual LCCs. I think I did want to say, and this is not on the whatever, but I noticed it this morning in Instagram, that East Hampton has a grant that they specified, that they said does not need to be for just East Hampton residents, and the deadline is tomorrow. So I'm going to put that here because y'all should know about it, and for those of y'all who like are kicking butt with it, like you can just have these and cut and paste. Take a look at it. That is the main information, but that page for some reason doesn't have the application page, and I'm just gonna add the application form right there. And that's what they call the East Hampton Artists Initiative Grant, and their grants are $500, and you have to do something in the town, but but you are creative, you can think of something, right? So and that'll be that. I think, Timothy, that's my part for now, and then I'll just come back and after Timothy is done.
Great. Luis, did you want to go over the application?
Oh, sorry, see? Yes, sorry. I am not done. Muhaha, muhaha. So this, normally our application timeline begins in September because, again, we get our money from the State House, they pass the budget in the summer, in August they okay it, the governor signs off on it. in late August, we get an okay on our spending plan from the board, but because of COVID, we moved everything up a month. So when I mentioned the council priorities, we ask every council that if they're going to change their council priorities, they need to have it changed by the day that we make the applications live. October 1st in this case is that day. Applications, you can, at this point, on October 1st, go onto our website that Timothy is going to go over and start applying for these things. And so theoretically, you're also looking at the priorities to see who you can apply to, because there are some who just say only artists from this community, right? So you want to look at that. So we let them all know that you need to have your priorities set by October 1st. We give you roughly 45 days. The deadline is November 16th. 2 weeks before November 16th, you will get an email if it hasn't been submitted saying, hey, you started this, are you cool? Do you want to move forward with this? But the deadline is November 16th. And then the LCCs, the individual LCCs will deliberate between November and December. Everyone does it different. There are some that are generally, this is how they do it, but we've seen a range of things. And then by this, by this schedule, they would reach a decision and get back to people in end of February. And yeah, that last question was, can several projects be pitched for funding to the same cultural council? If they're totally different projects, yes. You can, you can do that. Keep in mind though, that you are now, once you pitch two, competing against yourself, right? There's finite amounts of money. And when you submit it, you're, once they say, this is really great, we want to see it. But then once they start divvying up the money, then, so the big thing will be that part in the application that says, what will you do if you don't receive everything you got, right? The mitigation plan that you might have. And so Timothea, am I really done? Or is there another one that I'm forgetting?
You're done.
I did my part, no.
Great. Thank you so much, Luis, and thank you, Karen, Andrew, and everyone for having us. It is a pleasure to meet you all through, virtual means. But so for this portion of the presentation, I am going to walk you all through the FY21 LCC application. For those of you who have already applied, it's probably a review for you, but for those of you who haven't, this is just what your process is going to look like. And basically, I just want to remind everyone that I am your regional contact at the Mass Cultural Council. So if you have specific technical questions about the application, you can absolutely give me a call or email me and I'll be able to help you out. But if you're also interested in other grant programs that we offer at Mass Cultural Council, I am also there for you. So here we go. So the first step that you would take is you would go to mass-culture.org, and Luis already talked about this a little bit, but you are going to click on what you see, applicants here. And then after, this is the first landing page that you will receive, and it's just basically a general overview of the Mass Cultural Council. You could read a little bit more about the LCC program, and you can, check out your FAQs. And basically, it's really great that this is being recorded. So when you're actually applying, you could rewatch it and kind of, compare notes and the process. But this is what you will see. Luis did mention that our timeline has been shifted by a month. So as you see, applications will be available October 1st. So definitely you have some time. What I would do is just familiarize yourself with the website before you actually apply. It's great. And if you have any other questions, you could also contact Andrew or you can contact me as well. And if you have any other questions or technical questions, you could just drop them in the chat and Luis and I would be able to pick it back up once we have time. So the next step is you would search and select the council to which you intend to apply. So right now, if you type in Springfield, it would auto-populate and you would just click it. So next you would be brought to this council page, and basically you see a bunch of tabs here. So you have the Springfield Cultural Council's information, but you also have your LCC program guidelines. The council priorities are extremely important, especially if you are considering applying to different local cultural councils. So after you familiarize yourself with all the information and the council priorities, you would click on the Apply Now tab, and clicking on this link, it would link to our Smart Simple system. So it would take you to a different system where you would actually start your application. So here is the next step. You would be redirected to the site, and basically you would create a new registration account, and you would click register here. Basically, if you have an account from last year or the year before, I don't know exactly when the cutoff date was for the requirement to make something new, but basically if you applied, I think within the past like 4 years, you should be able to have the same account. But basically, if you forgot your password, you can click forgot your password. But also, I think from last year, my experience was a lot of people still had trouble getting in. And what you could do is you could just email me or call me during that time, and I'll be able to reset it for you. So afterwards, you're going to go through an applicant eligibility quiz if you are new. And basically, these are some of the questions. And the applicant resides in or is located in Massachusetts. Is the applicant one of the following? You need to only do this once, and you'll use the same registration information for each application you create. So this quiz, you just need to take it once for your account. So you can hover over the questions for more information. A lot of people have a lot of questions about the criteria that LCCs use to evaluate grants. I think a popular one, or just an example that we spoke about this week, was yoga. Someone wanted to do a project that included yoga, and they weren't sure necessarily which category it fit. But for us, it's like we would encourage people to think about it as an interpretive science, and there is some artistic or creative elements to that. But again, if you have questions about this, like the eligibility quiz, you can just let me know as well. So if you're a new applicant, you'll be brought to this blank form, and you'll just need to fill out this basic information. And once the information is complete, press submit, and you'll be sent an email with login instructions. So basically, this is just like a tip. Be sure to disable your browser's pop-up blocker. This has presented some issues in the past, so we just wanted to remind you. But this is just another slide that just kind of reiterates the points I just made. So after logging in, you'll be taken to the system's homepage, and to begin an application, click on Apply Now. So you see towards the left of the page, the orange button. And so on the first page, you'll be asked to provide your contact information. So here you see all the tabs, and this is basically the application, right? Applicant information, project overview, budget overview, supplemental materials, e-signature, and just like a check for everything. But this is basically where you're going to fill out your information. So for the next section, in the project information tab, you'll provide a summary of the project for which you're requesting funding. This is also where you'll put the council you are applying to. So again, just a reminder, you can apply to multiple local cultural councils. And right now it's really interesting. We're in a gray area where we don't necessarily know each local cultural council's allocation. But this is something that you could definitely utilize in the fall when you are applying. And please note that you need to submit a separate application to each council, even if it is for the same project. So you can't just submit one and then click a bunch of councils. You need to do it multiple times. These are just ways to look up, different local cultural councils, the lookup button. Right, so you're just going to type in your council name and it will auto-populate. So in the project overview tab, you'll need to answer narrative questions about your proposed project. And right here, there's just some tips, but I think a big thing to remember is always save your work. And what we would highly encourage is writing out the narrative responses in a Word document, a Google document, or Notepad, just so you have those answers saved. You never know what might happen, virtually or, with technological problems. So yeah, that's what we encourage. So copy and paste and always save. Again, press save to view project budget, the button. And so this is a different section, the budget overview. So applicants must select the project budget button to complete the estimated budget for their project. And right here, you can see a sample budget. So if you've never done this before, it seems more intimidating, but there's a clear outline of how to do it too. So once you click that button, a window will appear and you'll enter your projected expenses. The budget will need to have at least one expense listed in order to be accepted. So please note that additional income must be included in the sum of your total income for the project budget to be accurate. And right now, I think it's a little bit more confusing because we're not actually doing like a concrete application, but once you do it, I think it might make sense, or a little bit more sense. Again, the budget must balance for the application to be submitted. So while still in the budget overview tab, look over the budget details to confirm that the information is correct. You'll need to answer, a few more questions about the budget. And there's a, glossary at the bottom to help you with any of those terms if you may need it. But I really did want to emphasize this question. So how will you adjust the project if the council cannot fund the entire amount you are requesting? So let's say your project is $1,000, but the average that an LCC will give you is $300. So how will you modify your project or kind of do whatever you can to convince or to prove to the LCC that you will still be able to do your project given a limited amount of funds? And this is a particularly interesting topic as well, because with social distancing, there are a lot of modifications that are taking place. A lot of projects are going virtually. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're presenting or applying for a grant. It's just like, how will you modify it if you require it to be in person or something? So this is also a really, this section, it trips a lot of people up to the supplemental materials. So you may attach up to 3 pages of PDF documents, and each PDF has a limit of 3 pages. And basically there might be supplemental materials that are required from different local cultural councils. So right now I'm in Somerville and Cambridge, I know that they specifically have other requirements for people when they apply. Just other things, I know it might be Longmeadow Cultural Council, they have a requirement where they need a letter of support or a letter that would secure a physical venue. But again, I think that was before COVID, so it'll be interesting to see what local cultural councils are putting forth in their council priorities. But again, just always check, and then you can always ask me if you have questions. So after a window will appear and you can browse your computer's files. And again, each PDF is only limited to 3 pages. And basically, if you mess up and you need a reset, I will be able to do that as well. Again, if your materials include photos or more than 3 pages, you may include links to websites, Google Drive, or Dropbox folders on the files you're uploading. I think that's a good best practice if you think that you have too much information and want to, consolidate everything. So we're almost done. You can enter your initials to serve as an e-signature, and to submit an application, select the final submission box and hit submit below. If you left any required fields incomplete, it'll prompt you to go back and to fill those in. Again, there's just a reminder, please disable your pop-up blockers because that also presents some issues. Great. So now that you've submitted, look for a blue congratulations and save a copy of your application for future reference. If you don't see this, then you haven't successfully submitted. Again, go back and see if your pop-up blockers are disabled, and if they're not, you'll see the errors on the application that are not allowing you to submit. And sometimes people do lose their application and they need a hard copy. Again, if you need that, I'll be able to send it to you. So reminders will be sent automatically to applicants with unsubmitted drafts 1 and 2 weeks before the deadline. So you can start your application early, actually. So once it opens October 1st, I would just go in and, start, plugging away, and it'll just save your progress. And this is nice because, you'll know that you already started it. And this is actually the general email that we are going to be having right here. And I'll provide this information again to both Andrew and Karen in case that you need that immediately. But you can always reach me at my email because I'll be on it too. And I think that's basically it. That is the run through of the Smart Simple application.